Hello, morning. After sending you those three files, I hope you have had a look at those files. Three videos. One on the migration of human beings out of Africa. Another, I think, on the evolution of the Indo-European family of languages. And third one on the evolution of the Germanic subfamily of Indo-European, the major Indo-European family. All right. So I think I'll begin engaging you with a very short video. I think instead of engaging you for a full 2 hours altogether, I think it's useful to talk to you in bits and pieces, small videos. And you won't be bored. Nobody will probably listen to 2 hours at a stretch without getting bored. So I don't want to bore you. What I'll do is to begin the story at the very beginning, before the evolution of human language. So when was that? I think I am beginning the story around 200,000 years ago or 2 lakh years ago. The story begins in Africa. That is where our ancestors originated, first evolved. We are called Homo sapiens. Okay. But there were other humanoids evolving in different parts of the world. Okay. The Denisovans, who evolved in northern Siberia, Russia. The Neanderthals, Neanderthals, who evolved in Central Europe. They were also people like us, but they disappeared from the world, either because they couldn't withstand us, we were the more aggressive species, or because they simply disappeared due to their own inabilities. Okay. It is said that the Neanderthal man who evolved in Central Europe did not have language. So this is a very important piece of information. I don't know about the other humanoid group, which is called the Denisovans. 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 You can know more about these people from the net. Alright. So our ancestors, remember when I say that we are Homo sapiens, I don't mean that we are an unmixed race. There is some Neanderthal blood, not perhaps in us, we are Asians, but in the blood of Europeans. There is some admixture which went on for some time before the Neanderthals disappeared as a race, species. We probably don't have Neanderthal blood in our veins. Alright. So our ancestors originated in Africa. As I said, 200,000 years ago, 2 lakh years ago. And they migrated to all parts of the world. So by the year 10,000 BCE, we don't use the term BC now. BC simply meant before Christ. Instead, we today say before the common era. We don't associate it with Christ. We call it the common era. So around 10,000 BCE, almost the major migrations had entered. So human beings had populated almost the whole globe, major areas of the globe, except some islands. So I'm going to tell you how the story began. So let's say 200,000 years ago, there were people in Africa, our ancestors. They did not number more than 10,000. Imagine. What is today's population? Anybody? Well, it's more than 7,000 million or 700 crores. Probably it is more. This is a rough conservative estimate. But in the year, let us say 200,000 BCE, around 2100 BCE, there were less than 10,000 human beings on the earth. Small scattered tribes of perhaps 1,000 members each. Totally 10,000. So they were all living in Africa. Our ancestors were all living in Africa. So they migrated out of Africa, started migrating out of Africa around 70,000 BCE. Alright? And scientists say that when they started migrating out of Africa, they had acquired language. They had already discovered language. So as you probably know, if you subscribe to Darwin's theory of evolution, we evolved out of the higher primates, apes of different species, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, gibbon, Gibbon. These are the four major ape species in the world. So they are our closest relatives. Okay. And although we discovered language, the apes are also partly capable of using language. We are different from apes in two important ways. The apes cannot speak. Their articulatory organs are not well developed. So they can't speak. And two, this is more important. The apes can, if they are taught, they can use sign language, but in a very limited way. For example, an ape can say only small, not say, sign using their hands. Sign, I want a banana, or I want some water, or even such sentences like I hate you. An ape can tell its keeper at the zoo that it hates him, of course, only if they are taught. Remember, sign language is a human discovery. But my point is that apes are capable of using sign language, but only a very limited way. So what is the reason that apes can use language only in a very limited way? That's because apes do not have what we call short-term memory. Short-term memory is something that we use in computer science. Okay, the amount of memory which a computer's display can hold. So if you exceed that, if you keep too many files open, for example, a computer will malfunction. Okay, but in language use, short-term memory is the ability to remember some information which you said at the beginning of a sentence till you reach the end. So a sentence can be very complicated. I'll give you a complicated sentence. Not very long, but it's complicated. Okay, this is the sentence. The patient, the nurse, the clinic appointed, admitted, tested positive. Once again. The patient, the clinic, the patient, the clinic, the nurse, the patient, the clinic appointed, admitted, tested positive. Even you are confused. I'll say the sentence again. The nurse, the clinic admitted, the nurse, the clinic appointed, admitted. Getting it wrong again. Alright. This time I'll get it correct. See, that's because of the complexity of the sentence. I'll say it again. The patient, the nurse, the clinic appointed, admitted, tested positive. I won't get it wrong this time. Again. The patient, the nurse, the clinic appointed, admitted, tested positive. So what does it mean? You try to expand it, you will get the meaning. What is that? This is the thing. There was a patient who was admitted by a nurse the clinic had appointed, and the patient tested positive. This is the information. Positive for COVID or any such disease. Now, this information is packed into a small sentence by a process called ellipsis. So that you don't get the sentence wrong, I'll say it again. The patient, the nurse, the clinic appointed, admitted, tested positive. Got it? So we are capable of remembering what we said at the beginning without getting confused. I'm only confused about the sequence of words. Okay. Once I say it, the meaning is very clear to me, as it is to many of you. The only problem with you is that you might not have heard this sentence. Therefore, you can't get to the bottom of it. All right. So this is the idea. So an ape cannot store such information in its short-term memory. A human being can. So this is the difference. This is the difference between a human being and an ape in the use of language. So the linguist and philosopher Noam Chomsky, you will learn more about him in the course of your program here. So Noam Chomsky categorically said that only human beings can use language. So this was challenged by certain scientists who said apes can also use language, but in a very limited way. So language is not the sole property of human beings. Although, let me clarify here. Human language as it is used now, in all its complexity, is not accessible to apes. An ape can only use language in a very limited way. I have given you examples. I want a banana, I want some water, I want to take a piss. Okay. They are trained to urinate only in selected places. Okay. So they'll convey this information. Or if they want some food in the form of bananas, or if they want some water, they'll tell the keeper that they want water or a banana. So this is what happens. But they can't say a sentence like the one I just told you. They can't even say a sentence like, very simple sentence like, I want to see the keeper who went out. Not very complicated. Just two elements. The keeper who went out and the ape's wish to see him. Even such a comparatively small sentence an ape cannot say, or sign rather. So this is the history. This is the beginning of the origin of language. So it is language which primarily distinguishes human beings from other animals. Okay. Language in the current form, complexity. Many human traits are available to animals also. I would say language is the single phenomenon which distinguishes human beings from animals. Alright, so it is settled. Anthropologists say that 70,000 years ago, when human beings migrated out of Africa, they possessed language. Alright. So, why did they migrate out of Africa? Big question. They migrated out of Africa because food was becoming very scarce. Rainfall was decreasing. The climate was becoming colder. Not only in Africa, across the globe, whole earth. So they migrated out of Africa in search of food. So food or a living is very important to us even today. That's why we migrate to the Gulf countries or to North India, to Mumbai or Delhi or Chennai, anywhere out there, Bangalore. Food, living. So, exactly for this reason, human beings migrated out of Africa. Okay, and not that they found enough food in the areas they migrated, but they went on moving. So the trait of migrating or moving is an important one for human beings. It is probably embedded in our blood. You can't think of a person staying in one place or a person not going anywhere except there are some people, a few, because of traditional habits. But on the whole, we all like to travel. And this travel bug is there in our blood, because we are the descendants of the first human beings who migrated out of Africa. Alright? At the same time, after the agricultural age in world history, around 10,000 BCE, there is also an urge to settle down. So human beings have these two different urges. The urge to travel, okay, the travel bug, right, the travel whim, whatever you want to call it, and the wish to settle down in one place, to build a house. So all people have this two basically contradictory impulses. You don't want to sleep on pavements or the verandas of shops as destitutes, as people without a home do. Your wish is to build a house and settle down. At the same time, you also wish to travel. Okay, traveling is a great, fascinating phenomenon. Okay, I would say a big fancy that human beings have. That's why tourism has developed all over the world. People like to travel. So we don't travel always for food or a living. We do that still. But that's what I'm saying. Like the Africans who migrated out of the continent, we also migrate in search of a job. We go to very cold climates like Canada, which has in many places of Canada, temperature falls below -30 in winter. Yet, there are people who go to Canada in search of a living. So, this is what I'm saying. The Africans went out of the continent in search of food. Okay, and on the way, how did they travel? Another interesting part of the story. They traveled along the coast as far as possible. Okay, sometimes they traveled inland also, but their earlier travels were along the coast. Okay, and it's called a coastal highway. All right. Now let us see. Let us have a look at the condition of the world when they started traveling. As I said, the climate was cold. Rainfall had decreased. When rainfall decreases, what happens? You have less number of trees and plants. And when there are less number of trees and plants, the animals which make a living on them also die out. Which means, as a hunting people, our ancestors were hunters and gatherers. Two things. They lived by hunting animals. They lived by gathering fruits and vegetables, which grew in the wild. They did not cultivate anything. So they survived on animals and fruits and vegetables. So both these types of food were becoming scarce. If there is no rain, there won't be vegetables or fruits. If there is no vegetation, the animals which feed on them will become scarce. Any kind of animal species will decrease in number. There are animals which feed on other animals. So this is called the food chain. Starting with vegetables, fruits, plants, herbivorous animals which feed on them, carnivorous animals, which feed on other animals, and human beings which hunt both carnivorous and herbivorous animals. So animals were becoming scarce. So without these two types of food, how will human beings survive? So they survived by moving out of the interior parts of Africa. Their original habitat was a jungle. And their original habitat has been discovered. It is in the south eastern part of Africa, near the Kalahari Desert, Kalahari, according to the predominant view now. There are scientists who have different views, forget that. But when they migrated out of Africa, as I said, they migrated along the coast. When they migrated along the coast, they could find food in other ways. How? They could get food from the sea, fish, shell fishes, like our Kakkuzhi-Maliakkal or Kadka, whatever you want to call it. It's called mussels in English. And oysters, which we call erundu, elambaka, many names in Malayalam. So they could find these in plenty. If you dive into the sea and just simply pick them up, they can survive on those things. And did I say that the sea levels were very low? Yes, they were. Because when the climate gets colder, there is what is called global freezing. In many colder areas, sea levels come down. Water freezes into ice. And in some places, the sea levels go down so low that you can walk across them. Which means many places that are sea today were land in those times, 70,000 years ago. So, and when the sea level falls, it's easier to get these fish or shell fishes, shelled organisms, like chippy, erundu, kadukka or kallumakai, whatever comes in a shell, oysters, or mussels. So you get these things in plenty. So that is why they were able to survive. And they were able to move into some areas which were better than Africa, where there was some forest left. And more important, once they started migrating, walking, they had no other means of transport. No cars, no buses, no aircraft. They had to walk. So walking is an important human trait. Don't forget that. So if you're lazy, if you don't want to walk, if you always want to catch an auto or a bus or go in your own car, remember, this is an unnatural habit. Of course, you can't walk 1,000 kilometers. You have to go take a flight or you have to go by car. But you shouldn't forget this age-old habit of walking. So we have reached here where we have become what we are through walking. പറയാറില്ലേ, കണ്ടാണ് കടലുണ്ടായത്, നടന്നാണ് നമ്മളുണ്ടായത്. So we are what we are because we walked. So let me come back. So when they migrated out of Africa, they had language already. And why was language necessary? Why can't they just survive by making sounds? Calling people, drawing people's attentions with sound. Because they needed a more complicated communication system for hunting. So when you hunt in a group, each member will be assigned a task to watch for the animal, to see signs of the animal, the size of the animal's footprints. And you can guess the size of the animal from its footprints, the direction in which it went, or other things like whether there is a water source in the direction. It might have gone to drink water, or it might be going back to its lair, a cave or some other place where it lives. So the amount of information which is to be communicated became fairly large. So you can't do this by making noises. You can do this only by using language. That is where language originated. Okay. Now, archaeologists and linguists also discovered a people called the San Bushmen. S-A-N. They are called Bushmen because they live in bushy areas, okay, where there are no thick trees but just growths, small growths of bushes. They are called Bushmen. They don't like that term. Europeans call them Bushmen. They are called San, S-A-N. So the San Bushmen are actually, archaeologists believe, our ancestors. And there are people who live in the same area now, where they used to live 70,000 years. As I said, there are two tendencies for human beings: to remain where they are and to move out. Okay. So, not all people left Africa. Some of them stayed back. Okay, just a few of them. Because they were few in number, they could survive with available food. So, they are, as archaeologists say, if we believe archaeologists, they are our direct ancestors, the San Bushmen. And because they are our direct ancestors, archaeologists say that all the languages which are spoken today in the world have evolved from the ancestor of this language. It has a name. It is called Khoisa. K-H-O-I-S-A. The language spoken in this area. Okay. So there are many reasons why linguists consider this language as the original or as the descendant of the first original language. One, this language has a large number of sounds. So how many sounds have English and Malayalam? English has 44 sounds or phonemes. Malayalam has, by different estimates, 49, 50 or 51 sounds. Khoisa has more than 100 sounds. So linguists say there is a tendency for languages to lose sounds in the early part of their development, in the early stages of the development. And Khoisa has certain very interesting sounds. So let me make a sound. All these are simply noises. You don't recognize these as linguistic sounds. But for the Khoisa language, these are phonemes. Like the phonemes in English or Malayalam, like k, p, t. You have learned some phonetics. So you know, e, u. These are the sounds that we are familiar with. And all these sounds are actually pronounced by pushing out air. They are called aggressive sounds. You have learned this. Whereas this people in Africa, the San Bushmen, can pronounce words by using what are called ingressive sounds, sounds which you make by drawing air into your mouth, not pushing it out, into your mouth. So all these sounds are made by drawing air into your mouth. So no other language in the world today has such ingressive sounds. They are also called clicks, C-L-I-C-K-S. Which is why scientists say that these this language, Khoisa, is the descendant of the first language spoken by human beings in the world. All other languages have evolved out of it. So you might ask a very relevant question. Then why are languages so different today? They are different because they have evolved through thousands of years. They are different in the same way that an African is different from a Malayali, a black African, or even a white African. An Arab, an Egyptian Arab is different from a Malayali because of the ages which separate them. So the original Africans were all black, remember that. So we look a lot different because of these intervening years, because of 70,000 years of difference. Although, let me make it clear, as Chomsky made clear somewhere else, although languages look very different on the surface, underneath they are much the same. Chomsky pointed this out. Although the words that you use are all different, you can't understand Khoisa. You can't understand a word, as people say. But underneath, Khoisa has basically almost the same structure as Malayalam. How? Because it has nouns, it has verbs, it has adjectives. It can be used to ask questions. It can be used to make statements. It has complex sentences. Nearly every important basic structural properties of other languages, Khoisa also possesses. So the real characteristics of languages lie in their structural properties. Whether you can ask questions, whether you can make a statement, whether you can say a yes or no question, whether you can turn a sentence into a question. Like, for example, I'll say, I like mangoes. This is not a statement, a question. So you say, sir, you like mangoes. So I ask back, I like mangoes? I do this by raising the tone of my voice. So almost all languages of the world have such properties. So that's why Khoisa, although it is very different from Malayalam, is underneath much the same. Except, some difference. Like, for example, some languages begin with have this structure called SVO, subject, verb, object. English has Ram killed Ravan. In Malayalam you say Raman Ravanane konnu. Okay. Subject, object, verb. So such differences exist, but anyway you have both subject and predicate in Khoisa or Arabic or Russian or Malayalam. That's the point I want to make. So the humans migrated out of Africa, and one group passed through India. First group went right up to Australia, and their descendants are still available in India. Okay. So it's a very complicated process, but I'll end this brief lecture by mentioning one way in which scientists discovered that this migration had taken place. What was that? So, your genes or your blood will not remain the same over thousands of years. What will happen is they mutate. Mutate means change. So, the changes can happen more frequently if you leave your old environment. So people who migrate have more changes in their bodies, which you can identify by testing your blood. So scientists tested the blood specimens of thousands of people in the world, millions of people of every population group. Europeans, American natives, Indians, Africans, Australian natives. And when they found common properties in the blood of certain groups, they can certainly say that they originally belonged to one place. And you can even identify the places where they lived by the particular changes in their bodily structure, in their genes. So when they examined the blood of a person in Madurai, in Tamil Nadu, they found that it carried certain properties which were also found in Australian Aboriginal people, natives. So I said that in around 60,000 years ago, one group of human beings migrated through India right up to Australia. And please remember what I said in the beginning. Migrating as well as settling down are contradictory trends. So with the agriculture age, it became more common. But this urge existed even before that. So as you go along, some people stay back. They don't go along with their group. So they settle down. And they somehow make a living. Agriculture was not yet discovered. So 50,000 years ago, some people stayed back in India. So Malayalis have their blood in our genes. We also have the blood of other migratory groups. The Dravidians migrated about 9,000 years ago. They came from various places. And you migrate and remigrate. A group of people who went to Central Asia would later on migrate to India or north towards Siberia. So it's a continuous process. And as we migrate, our language changes. And over and above this migratory change, you have a mixing of languages. You interact with other linguistic communities and you pick up parts of their language. So this is how the languages of the world developed. Today there are more than 7,000 languages in the world. The saddest thing is that some small languages are dying out. Languages spoken by small groups of people, 200, 1,000. Languages spoken by tribals in the Andaman Islands. They are also part of India. Because their number is decreasing. Their fertility rates are decreasing. They don't have many children. And some couples do not have children at all. Scientists say that's because if you live in an isolated place for a long time, your fertility decreases. Your ability to survive. So the secret of our success is that we migrated. We are not living here in isolation. We still migrate. We interact with other people. We intermingle with other races. So the best guarantee for your survival as a people is your ability to mingle with other people. Okay. So not only physically, but also culturally. If you think you are the greatest people, you are the cat's whiskers, okay, you are greater than any other people on earth. ഈ പൊങ്ങച്ചം കാണിച്ചാൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് നിലനിൽക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല. So that's by historical reasons. The Andaman people are not there by choice. When they inhabited the Andaman Islands, they went, but those seas around Andaman Islands were land actually, as I said. So after some time, sea levels rose and they were trapped in the islands. So all island living people are actually trapped by climate change. So I said 70,000 years ago there was an ice age. Water levels were low. Many places which are sea now were land. And the people in Andaman, the Andamans had migrated there. Some, let us say 50,000 years ago. when there was a land bridge between India and the Andaman Islands. But once they are there, once they were there, some of them settled without moving off, and a little later sea levels rose and they were trapped. So this is briefly the history of the human language. So I'll be moving on to other topics soon. Bye.